Alright, today I'm going to show you basically the basics for a beginner into the RC world. This is the ECX Torment. It's a short course truck, two-wheel drive. I've seen a lot of beginners wanting to get this truck, and sometimes it can be a little intimidating if you're trying to get the lingo and know what's going on, but you're not sure what is what. What I'm going to try and do is do an intermediate kind of to show you how to get started in the ropes of it and everything. What we're going to do at the first is take off the motor in the back and show you how to easily take that whole assembly off and go into the details of the motor and gears, transmission, and the whole drivetrain, so you can kind of get a better understanding of what's going on. So here is the motor disassembly. First you have this screw here which attaches to the bumper. Then you have these two screws back in here which attach to the differential, and then you'll have two screws on the bottom. So first I'll take these out. I already got them a little way started, so you can kind of don't have to sit here and watch unscrewing all day. So that's one screw. This will be the longer one. All the other screws will be about the same, so you'll have just two in here. And then after you got those two, you can flip it around on its back side, and so you'll have these two screws and these two long ones. You'll only need to take out now these four right here. So these two right here are going to remove the back bumper. The back bumper whole assembly only has 3 screws on this truck, so it's really easy, not very intimidating. So now you can just slide it off, wiggle it back and forth. Now you see the whole bumper has come off with 3 screws, that one and those two. Now the motor has 2 screws left. That's this one here and this one here. You'll unscrew both those and then we'll flip it back around. If you notice, the motor's still held in place, but there's no screws on it right now. Basically you'll lift back on the shock tower a little bit and pop it out right there. You can pinch on these and disconnect them, and then as you're pulling out, your drive shafts will pull out and you'll be able to disassemble the whole drivetrain, including motor and all, so you can have it easy to work with and show. You don't always have to do this, and I'll show you some of the ways of working without taking out the whole assembly, but even on this truck it's really easy to take it out. These axles here, we'll also talk about why they're different than the stock and how the stock will be the same when you put it on. Now putting this back on is basically putting your shafts back in alignment and putting both sides of the shaft on so that they're slidden in together. And then once you got those two on, there's basically a knob right here on the bottom of the motor. It goes into that square to automatically align you up. And so basically you want to get that knob in the square first, and then you're going to pull back on your shock tower and snap it back in. And that will basically set your motor up where it needs to be so that you can line the screws and get it set in. So it's really nice, really easy, and really simple. Red to red, black to black. This is the motor assembly that we were talking about. Now that it's removed, I've gone ahead and taken some of the screws and loosened them out. We're going to now look into the pinion and the spur gear, also with the slipper clutch. So I'm going to leave everything attached, and we're just going to take this shell off. You can adjust your slipper clutch using this little porthole with only loosening up this one screw and sliding it out of the way. But, we don't really need to worry about that right now. So what I'm going to do is finish taking all these out, and it's basically just 3 screws, which you can also do without removing the motor. So you can take off this shaft without removing the motor. You can do it on the side of the truck because it fits right here on the side. So when I finish taking these 3 out, basically now for a new beginner that may be a little intimidated about what he's looking at, this is the motor. It's attached by 2 screws. It has the pinion gear here. This pinion gear is attached to the motor shaft. They're also 48 pitch. 48 pitch is the type of teeth setup, and so you just want to make sure that if you're going to change out the spur or pinion, which this being the spur, that you get the same pitch or for both gears so that they equal up together. This is your slipper clutch. This plate here and the little sandpaper looking thing is basically the slipper clutch, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So with your pinion, if you want the truck to go faster, you can add more teeth to your pinion. So right here, this isn't the stock. This is a 23 tooth pinion. The stock pinion comes with 20 teeth. So I added speed, but when you add speed, sometimes you give up torque. So for added speed, you lose torque. So a bigger pinion equals more speed, less torque. A smaller tooth pinion equals less speed, but more torque. Basically, you can work on your gearing. These are the two important gears to work on. The spur gear is the opposite, exact opposite of the pinions. Spur gear, basically the smaller the spur gear is, the more speed you're going to get and the less torque. The bigger the spur gear is the more torque you're going to get and less speed. So what we're going to do is take off the spur gear. Basically, there's a little set screw right there. The spur gear set screw goes on the flat part of the shaft on the motor. So we loosen that up and it immediately moves this pinion gear. I apologize. We're removing the pinion gear. That little set screw will remove that pinion gear for you. So now that the pinion gear is removed, you can go ahead and set that down. Make sure try not to lose that set screw. Those go away very quickly. This is the flat side of the shaft and the rounded part. So that's your spur gear. Now, your pinion gear. So now with your pinion gear out, and you can also leave it in if the pinion gear was small enough, it will fit through that hole where the shaft is. We'll go ahead and remove the motor. So this is a brushed motor. It's the stock 20 turn. I'm leaving it in there as the way it is. I've just kind of decided to rip the paper off. So that's what it is. This is the brushed motor itself. So this is the brushed motor here. Basically, there's a lot of different ways to break this in. Some people stick it in water. The way I do it, I let them run without any traction on them, without any resistance on them. So I'll take them out. You can plug them in right here, and you can run them and set your remote with your throttle trim and just have it go nice and easy. And then I use a cleaner, which basically this is a cleaner, and you just take this hose, and you can get them at any hobby store, just a brush cleaning system. Take the hose and get it in here and spray through until it comes out clean instead of black. That will get all the beginning brushes out of there, and you can also spray a little bit in here and just try and get it all cleaned up in there. That's the way I break mine in, is just simply plugging them in here, holding them, spinning them one way for a while on the throttle trim, spin them the other way on the throttle trim for a while, then cleaning them out thoroughly, usually half a pack per way, and then clean out. After you're cleaning out, you're just going to want some brushing oil. A lot of people try WD-40 and stuff like that, but I use stock motor oil for brushing. Basically, you're just going to want to put it around the shaft here, and then the shaft part back here. WD-40 sometimes will actually clean out some oil and grime in there and attract dust. So I don't typically like to use that. I just like to use stock motor oil, which is for bushings, not ball bearings. So you want to use bushings if you're using the throwaway can brush motors like this one. We're going to move to the spur gear and the slipper clutch. I'll show you what this is. Basically, you hold it down real tight and you hold the wheels from turning, and you'll spin this nut off right here. And there's a nut with a spring. This is the part of the slipper clutch. Basically, how tight this nut holds down the spring will hold this plate against this assembly here. So basically, I'll show you how this works here. Is your spur gear spins, but its circle is round, as you can tell, where it holds on. But in here, this is got some flat parts, 2 flat parts to be precise, which align up with these 2 plates here. These 2 plates actually spin the shaft, not the spur gear. The spur gear gets spun by the pinion gear and allows these 2 plates then to spin freely if they had no pressure on them. But since we put the spring with the nut and we put pressure on it, the more pressure we put, the more it becomes one total piece, like clamped together. But if we don't have too much piece, then pressure, then this can spin, the spur gear can spin freely, and your wheels will never move.